Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into author Abhas Verma's absolutely fascinating historical thesis on the Maratha War of Independence. We're going to explore a perspective that literally shifts how we understand the history of the Indian subcontinent, drawing directly from a detailed discussion with the author himself. All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll be covering a missing historical chapter, the foundation of the empire, the unyielding Maratha resistance, Aurangzeb's Deccan ulcer, the Battle of Dadari, and we'll wrap it up with the legacy of the struggle. Okay, starting off with Section 1, a missing historical chapter. So think about this for a second. Did the struggle for Indian independence actually begin in 1857? According to the source material, author Abhas Verma challenges this deeply ingrained notion. So many of us grow up learning that 1857 was the absolute definitive starting point, right? But Verma argues there was an entirely different, massive war for independence that happened much, much earlier. This is exactly the paradigm shift Verma is arguing for. Just think about your standard textbooks. The timeline usually jumps straight from Emperor Aurangzeb right over to the Battle of Plassey and the start of British company rule. It's like a giant puzzle with missing pieces. Verma's research highlights a massive 27-year resistance that gets frequently minimized or just completely omitted from standard education. He points out a whole century where the Marathas were actually the dominant power before the British even took over. The author frames this 27-year conflict as the true original war for independence against the Mughals. He argues that this foundational push for liberation was initiated by Shivaji and carried fiercely forward by the Marathas. It essentially set the precedent for all future freedom struggles in the region. Moving right along to Section 2, Foundation of the Empire. It's absolutely fascinating to see how Shivaji totally shifted the historical paradigm. He went from a mindset of regional service to a grand vision of complete sovereign independence. At a time when regional leaders traditionally just worked under the Bijapur, Adil Shahi, or Mughal empires, Shivaji actually envisioned a self-governing entity. The source describes how he wanted an independent, sovereign empire very much like the Vijayanagara Empire that came before it. And Verma makes it clear that Shivaji was incredibly far-sighted here. He established these strongholds way deep into Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, like building a fort in Jinji near modern Pondicherry and securing regions around Bangalore and Tanjore. Keep in mind, these were regions that spoke completely different languages, like Tamil rather than Marathi. But this incredible geographic expansion, well, it would eventually prove absolutely vital for the empire's very survival in the years to come. Which brings us to Section 3, Unyielding Maratha Resistance. This resistance definitely did not die with Shivaji. After he passed, his son Sambhuji stepped up and led a fierce resistance for about 9 years, right up until his tragic execution. Now, Aurangzeb probably thought the war was finally won at that point, but no way. The struggle passed seamlessly to Shivaji's other son, Rajaram, who actually escaped to that far-sighted fort in Jinji we just talked about, keeping the Mughals bogged down for another 10 years. And following his death, his wife Tarabai relentlessly took over the struggle until Aurangzeb's own death in 1707. Talk about an unbreakable 27-year front. But crucially, we have to understand that this wasn't just a Maratha effort. The source outlines the amazing contributions of diverse groups, detailing this really fascinating legend about the Barad or Ramoshi community. According to the text, they asked for 3 boons: the ability to farm with minimal resources, unmatched marksmanship and accuracy with firearms, and unwavering loyalty to Shivaji. And let me tell you, their exceptional gunmanship absolutely devastated the Mughal ranks, who were still heavily relying on bows and arrows. The source also details how Aurangzeb's attempts to buy off Maratha leaders, or just sow discord among them, utterly failed. Even when Aurangzeb held Sambhaji's son captive, specifically hoping to spark a civil war over the throne, the Marathas actually united even further. In fact, they drew in local southern Hindu leaders, known as Nayaks, completely thwarting all of the Mughal attempts to create those internal divisions. Let's head into Section 4, Aurangzeb's Deccan ulcer. Comparing it to Napoleon's infamous Spanish ulcer, the source quotes historian Jadunath Sarkar, who bluntly stated, "The Deccan ulcer ruined Aurangzeb." The text explains that Aurangzeb spent well over a decade just completely bogged down in the south. This obsessive military campaign quite literally drained his empire's lifeblood, its wealth, and its administrative focus. And the consequences of this were just devastating. Because Aurangzeb paranoidly centralized all his power in his southern camps, the once wealthy north completely fell into ruin. Vital revenue from places like Malwa, Bihar, and Bengal drastically plummeted. The source even notes that rebellious Zamindars in the north openly mocked Mughal authority. They were actively humiliating and expelling Mughal tax collectors. To truly grasp the boldness of this resistance, the author highlights this one incredible raid following Sambhaji's death. Maratha commander Sanchaji Ghorpade actually managed to infiltrate Aurangzeb's personal camp. Now, Aurangzeb wasn't in his tent that night, so Santaji literally severed the golden pinnacles of the emperor's personal tent and took them as a trophy. It's such an audacious act, and it beautifully illustrates just how fearless the Maratha guerrilla tactics had become against the supposedly invincible Mughal emperor. All right, moving to Section 5, the Battle of Dadari. Verma points out that the Battle of Dadari in 1696 was so utterly brutal for the Mughals that even Maratha historians underreported it. But the Mughal historian Kafi Khan, he recorded the total devastation. It was this massive, devastating ambush in Karnataka led by Santaji Ghorpade. The Mughal governor of Sira, Qasim Khan, was so profoundly humiliated by the defeat that he actually committed suicide in shame. And the financial extortion here was just staggering. During this battle, the Mughals arrogantly expected a ransom demand of a mere 2 lakh rupees for their kidnapped commander, but the Marathas knew exactly what they were doing and successfully extorted a massive 20 lakhs. That's 2 million rupees. The harsh reality of this defeat is captured perfectly by a quote from Mughal historian Kafi Khan's own writings. He stated that the Mughals were, quote, reduced to eating grass and straw. It describes a scene of absolute misery, completely stripping away any lingering illusion of Mughal military superiority in the south. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Legacy of the Struggle. You see, the Maratha resistance proved to the rest of the subcontinent that the Mughals could indeed bleed, and this inspired cascading revolts everywhere. The Rajputs refused to marry their daughters into the Mughal family and held a conference in Pushkar in 1712 that prioritized the Udaipur lineage. Meanwhile, massive Satnami and Jat revolts erupted. The source even notes that the Jats supposedly went as far as unearthing and discarding Emperor Akbar's remains. This all builds to a catastrophic final strike right before Aurangzeb's death. The Marathas attacked the emperor's massive royal baggage train. They killed his personal bodyguards and, according to the source, even captured an unnamed Mughal princess. The Maratha commander, Danaji Jadhav, nearly captured Aurangzeb himself, but was reportedly only deterred because his troops were distracted by the sheer blinding wealth of the royal camp. Verma actually suggests that this ultimate humiliation may have severely hastened Aurangzeb's death in 1707. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. If this 27-year war of independence completely reshaped the geopolitics of the subcontinent, how would our understanding of Indian history change if this was placed at the very center of every standard textbook? It's a really fascinating question about the stories we choose to remember and how we teach them. Thanks for joining me to explore this profound historical thesis. Keep questioning and keep learning.